it is because they began to do photosynthesis that the atmosphere became oxygenated. If you look at biochemistry here and biochemistry here, you will find that there is a lot of difference. For example, eukaryotic organisms like ourselves now have cholesterol in our membranes, whereas archaea do not have the same kind of lipids that we have. And those of you who remember the structure of cholesterol, and I don't have it on a slide here, will note that there is one oxygen atom in cholesterol. Among all the carbon come from oxygen, or did it come from water? These are the only two sources of oxygen on Earth. And it turns out it came from molecular oxygen. So all cholesterol producing organisms would have come only after the grand oxygenation event took place. And you can see where man appears. Very primates right down there. So we've been around for a very, very short period here. And this is now very well established for both the two oxygenation events which have led to the current level of oxygen. When you're in agriculture, you're always talking about photosynthesis. And if you're talking about photosynthesis, you must worry then about this grand cycle in which carbon dioxide on the one hand and oxygen on the other play a role. The origin of chemicals, stand students who are interested, some very recent references. But here I must draw your attention to this, because today we are on the 13th of February, and on the 23rd of January in the journal Nature, this paper has appeared. Whether you're a microbiologist or a physicist, one should go and look at this paper. This is the isolation of archaeon at the prokaryote-eukaryote interface. And how was this done? This is an experiment in which this bacterium has been cultured repeatedly over a period of 12 years in order to get enough of the bacterium, growing also in the presence of a methanogen, in order to be able to characterize a very, very slow growing archaeon and then find out, sequence its entire genome and thereby establish all of its metabolic biochemistry. This is a remarkable achievement. It's a wonderful paper, but it also tells you that in asking fundamental questions, you need a great deal of patience and you need a great deal of resilience to continue long-term experiments. But prebiotic chemistry really works this way, and I thought I would just put this up to tell you a little chemistry. What is the molecule which might lead to the bases in DNA? That molecule, ironically, is hydrogen cyanide. The same hydrogen cyanide with which Hitler killed so many people. The same hydrogen cyanide is also used for making the nucleic acid bases in primitive Earth conditions. And you can see how the chemistry goes. Only with hydrogen cyanide and light you can get this far. Now, if you go back and look at the abundance of small molecules in comets, because many of these molecules might have come from comets onto early Earth, you will find hydrogen cyanide and formaldehyde present in substantial amounts. But I will show you a very recent paper which has appeared in Nature Chemistry 2 or 3 years ago, where they show that hydrogen cyanide is a versatile precursor, but along with hydrogen sulfide, copper, and light, you can put together, in fact, many of the molecules of intermediary metabolism. And therefore, you're beginning now to see, even in vitro laboratory experiments, you can put together many of the molecules of metabolic biochemistry under very primitive chemical conditions. So really the question that we might ask ourselves is this, and this question has been asked wonderfully by Nick Lane in this book called The Vital Question. And the question he asks is, why is life the way it is? Bacteria evolved into complex life just once in 4 billion years of life on Earth. And all complex life shares many strange properties. So today, when I saw your magnificent phenomics facility, I was struck by the fact that when you have a phenomics facility, you're really looking at the phenotypic characteristics of plants. But you can as well look at the phenotypic characteristics of all of life's diversity, and you will see that all complex life shares many strange properties: sex, aging, death. And this, of course, gives you enough food for thought. I would think it gives you a great deal of food for thought as you get old, but I think if one wants to answer true scientific questions the hard way, it's better that you start thinking about these things when you're young. He says, if life evolved on other planets, would it be the same or completely different? And does chemistry now constrain biology? We have Mendeleev's periodic table before us. We know all the chemistry that we can possibly know. But now I'm going to go very quickly through the rest of my presentation because it is even more general. You might ask, what was the distribution of human beings 200,000 years ago? And this is straight from YouTube, and the student should go and look at this. There is life coming out of East Africa. This is the most popular theory today for human evolution, that all life evolved from a position in East Africa and then migrated elsewhere. So 200,000 years ago, you will find that much of Earth is actually unpopulated by human beings, maybe populated by many other things. 32,000 years ago, there it is. Human beings have spread. At the beginning of our present era, what you might call the contemporary era, you will now find there's a great deal of human population everywhere. But of course, you can see the Americas have not still been discovered. And there's relatively a few human populations in Americas. But everywhere else, there are a lot of people. India and China, of course, even then have a lot of people. But the total number of people is still a staggeringly small 190 million people. So now you can estimate the rate of population growth. And the Malthusian catastrophe was actually predicted by Malthus in the 18th century. But it turns out that the Malthusian catastrophe has been avoided largely because of improvements that one has had. But one might ask, what were the major events in this kind of development of human beings? The single most important event is the invention of agriculture. And those of you who are in agriculture must ask this question. The single most important event is agriculture, because it was only when agriculture was invented, what you might call wild wheat was tamed, and you didn't have to hunt animals. Before that, you would be a hunter-gatherer. You can still find them in the Andaman Islands. But once you had agriculture, and I saw your fields, what is the first thing that you have to do with the field? You have to protect it. Who do you protect it against? You protect it from other people who want food. And therefore, slowly as people became static, became involved in agriculture, societies needed to evolve. And as societies evolved, you need, for societal evolution, which is, I would call, cultural evolution, and I will show you that in a minute, you need this kind of integrating stories which will hold people together. But there's a lot of discussion today about where the early Indians came from, and I would urge you to look at this book by Tony Joseph on early Indians, because much of what we are going to learn now is going to come from the analysis of DNA of individuals who lived thousands of years ago, because ancient DNA now can be extracted from very readily dated skeletons. And today there are as many as 7,300 ancient DNA samples which can be dated quite precisely. Much of this work going on at Harvard in David Reich's lab, but a lot of it going on in collaboration with Indian laboratories, including the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad. Where do, up to now, if I talk of biochemistry, then biochemistry determines biology, and biology determines evolution. When does evolution stop being determined by biology and chemistry? And according to Harari, who wrote this wonderful book, Sapiens, which is there in every airport, everywhere, many people should read it. You don't have to agree with everything that he says, but you should nevertheless read it. In fact, you should read all those books with which you don't agree much more closely than the books with which you agree. Then he says that the main components of it, once cultures appear, they never cease to change and develop, and these unstoppable alterations are what we call history. He also says that the cognitive revolution is accordingly the point when history declared its independence from biology. For the animals, biology still holds good. But for human beings, biology no longer holds good. And then he says, from the cognitive revolution onwards, historical narratives replace biological theories as our prime means of explaining the development of Homo sapiens. He says, to understand the rise of Christianity or the French Revolution, it is not enough to comprehend the interaction of genes, hormones, and organisms. It is necessary to take into account the interaction of ideas, images, and fantasies as well. And this is something that we should think about when we think about the evolution of cultures. The evolution of cultures is very closely related to the evolution of myths, it's the evolution of mythology, the evolution of religion. There was no religion before that. There was only biology. Wordsworth said it very well. He said, for nature to me was all in all. And so it's nature that one must look at. But Bronowski in The Ascent of Man says this, among the multitude of animals which scamper, fly, burrow, and swim around us, man is the only one who is not locked into his environment. His imagination, his reason, his emotional subtlety, and his toughness make it possible for him not to accept the environment, but to change it. And that series of inventions by which man from age to age has remade his environment is a different kind of evolution, not biological, but cultural evolution. I call that brilliant sequence of cultural peaks the ascent of man. Will cultural evolution influence biological evolution? This is a question that you must ask. And for this, I found the only example that I could find was again related to your own discipline of agriculture. Cultural evolutionary theory, how culture evolves and why it matters, is the title of this wonderful paper. And they argue that cultural transmission is more complex than genetic transmission and may occur on shorter time scales even within a single generation. But cultural, genetic, and environmental factors together can influence evolution. And here is biochemistry again towards the end of my lecture. Today I saw the cows, and it was also pointed out to me how in integrated farming it is very important to have a component of the dairy, because it is only the dairy which will produce milk every day. And if that milk is sold, then agricultural economics will tell us that you can sell something and get money where the other crops are going to grow very, very slowly. Do human beings need to drink milk? The answer, of course, is no. Human beings did not evolve to drink milk. No animal beyond the weaning stage really drinks milk. So it turns out that cultural traits can alter selection pressures on genetic traits and vice versa. The phenomenon of lactose intolerance is very widespread. It's widespread in India, it's widespread in Africa. It's much less widespread in other places. What is lactose intolerance? Lactose intolerance is really because of the deficiency of the enzyme lactase, and which breaks down lactose. Now, if lactase is absent, the lactase gene, for one reason or the other, is no longer working after development. Once the baby has been weaned, you no longer really need to express a lactase very much. Now it turns out that these scientists have now mapped the lactase gene and looked at lactase persistence. And lactase persistence now, the red or orange is lactase, where lactase is present. The yellow regions are where the lactase is not present. And you can see now here, for example, South India, where I come from, we nevertheless drink a lot of milk, even though we don't feel quite well after drinking it. But it's now become traditional, it's become a part of our nutritional upbringing, and we can't do without it. I need a glass of milk every night before I go to sleep, because that's what I learned. Now you can see lactase persistence is much less here than it is in North America, where of course this has been pushed for many, many generations. And today it is almost not there in Africa, where, for example, world organizations, United Nations organization, which try to push one kind of nutritional security on human populations without worrying about genetic diversity, it's not a very great idea now to be now promoting the milk use of dairy products in Africa, where I think meat eating is in fact very much more prevalent. So this is an example. If you do this over generations, slowly we will select out for individuals where lactase persistence is there. So cultural traits can sometimes influence genetic traits over very long periods of time. And this is my final slide. I am a chemist at heart and a biologist by studying over many, many years. And if I ask myself the question, where is the most wonderful chemistry to be found? I think really it is in the chemistry of microorganisms, which have now invented chemistry in order to be able to survive the biological imperative of survival and adaptation, which Darwin introduced, is inherent in them, and therefore they evolve their chemistry to use their environments. Carl Weiss, who really discovered the third branch of the tree of life, the archaea, when he died, I looked on the internet and I found some wonderful student had put this tribute to Carl Weiss on the internet, and he put his picture there, put the tree of life, and he said, quoted from Pliny the Elder. He said, nature is to be found in her entirety, nowhere more than in her smallest creatures. I would just paraphrase this to say that if you want to find chemistry in her entirety, you will have to really look in microbiology, because it is in the chemistry of microorganisms that chemistry at its most diverse will really be found. Why have I chosen to talk to you today about a range of subjects like this? It is a set of scattered thoughts which have simply been put together to give a lecture after Dr. Singh invited me to do so. It is because of the environment. It is because of the environment, what I would call climatic, social, and political, in which we live today. Some reflection on the roles of chemistry and biology in shaping nature may allow us to introspect on the course of human history and attempt to understand why the world today is the way it is. Science is a deeply humbling subject. Humility is a rare quality in leaders, but this was a defining characteristic of Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri ji. In paying a tribute to him, I can only speak of subjects that I understand to a limited extent, but I hope that I have conveyed to you how any attempt to understand even the smallest of nature's creations can be deeply humbling. But I have one last thing to say before I conclude, and that is just to tell you a little anecdote. My father was a railway servant, and he happened to be posted in Delhi many, many years ago when I was a child. And somewhere when I was 2 or 3 years old, he took me along to a function. And he was a very junior person at that time. He took me along to a function. And in Delhi, everybody could attend functions in those days. You didn't need an invitation card. And this was a railway function in which Lal Bahadur Shastri ji was presiding. And he was, of course, even in those days, garlanded a lot because he was the railway minister. And as he came down the hall, right at the end of the hall, he saw this small child standing with his father. And he took the garland off him and put it on me. And this was a story that, and this I believe was a high point of my parents' stay in Delhi at that time, and they would tell me the story repeatedly as I grew up. But I must say, so many decades later, it's really humbling for me to come back and give a lecture in memory of Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri. Thank you.
I hope you will all agree to me that we were really spellbound, and thank you, sir, for such an exciting talk. May I now request Chairman to give your valuable remarks.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure each one of you will agree with me that this is such a profound lecture, and closing down with a wonderful memory that Professor had, that when he was a child, with his father standing outside, obviously Lal Bahadur Shastri ji loaded with flowers and coming out, he must have seen something in him so that he, part of his flower bouquet, garlands, he put around his neck. You can see why. I am sure today we have the grandson of Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri ji here with us. Sir, I would like you to, again, if we have some more flowers left here, to come and kindly present it to our distinguished speaker. This will connect, this will bring the revolution in a cycle. Revolution in a cycle. And while Sir Sameep ji, you do this to Balram ji, may I request each one of you, my friends, to give a standing ovation. Since the distinguished speaker also talked of the origin of man, milk, culture, agriculture being the basis of all cultures, and through the culture evolution of habits and the way we live our lifestyle and so on. He talked about the lactase tolerance and so on. I want to narrate to you when Lal Bahadur Shastri ji saw the good work which George Burgess Kurian was doing for creating the Amul dairy in Gujarat, he insisted that I would like to come and visit your work. And Sameep ji, you may recall, you may not recall, but you may ask your seniors that Lal Bahadur Shastri ji went to Gujarat villages, he spent time with Kurian, and he saw how Kurian was able to really multiply the milk production where thousands and ultimately millions of women in the morning will come and deposit their 1 kilo of milk in the village cooperative, get their money and go back. So this culture evolution based around agriculture, living cooperatively, bringing that 1 kilo milk to make million of kilos, processing through the best of the processing systems today, and then delivering through the dairy shops all over the country. This is all showing the evolution, cultural evolution, ecological evolution, chemical evolution, you name it and whatnot. And since this was a lecture based with that person's personality, Jai Bhavan, Jai Kisan, of course, now we talk of Jai Vigyan and Jai Anusandhan. If all those things are taken together, sir, the cycle is complete, but never complete because you can always see there is something waiting for your attention. And this is where I feel that the wholesome approach, as a matter of fact, today we talk of agriculture, how he was able to bring the agriculture in the middle of culture, and how the agricultural evolution through the evolution of chemistry, biochemistry, biology, DNA, energy, and so on and so forth, transformation, creating new production materials and so on, resulting into the biomass production and then recycling and the whole cycle, happening because of basic science. But then here is again a very strong lesson he has left, that please look at that simplest of the cell, the single simplest microbial to man. If you understand that microbe, you understand the man. To understand that microbe, you know the chemistry, biochemistry, genetics, and so on and so forth. You know the physics, biophysics, informatics, all have to be understood. What is happening today in many agricultural universities, the basic sciences have eroded. Hardly we teach anything like biophysics, biochemistry or chemistry in the real true sense, or mathematical based developments and so on. Your lecture, sir, has again ignited the feeling and probably bring to bear upon the reality of life. Put that agriculture in the best of science, in the middle of best of science, and agriculture will continue to be the basis of all cultures for all times to come, because food is the first in the hierarchy of man's demand. And that will come from nowhere through a biological system allowed to produce the food that we consume. So much of chemistry, so much of interlinkage, so much energy recycling, all that is happening in evolutionary form. So see it collectively together. Sir, thank you very much for highlighting some of these basic facts. Not only the humanity through the greatest son of India served through that single message, showing the importance of food, that if you have to grow, if you have to remain self-sufficient, even if you have to observe to miss a meal a day, if a week or a day somewhere, that kind of sacrifice around food. And that personality again brings us to bear upon, if you have to be abundant in food, if you have to feed the humanity at large, by the year 2050 we will be 1.7 billion, 400 million more than in China. Our lands will be shrinking, our water is already stressed. Only science can save you to feed 1.7 billion by 2050 with the best of science and genetics and other sciences together to produce more from less for more. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for teaching us, for guiding us to bring the best of science to bear upon the humanity's future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request our beloved director, Dr. A.K. Singh, to felicitate the esteemed chair of this session, Professor R.B. Singh ji, with a mark of affection. Now I request Professor R.B. Singh ji to kindly present a shawl and memento to the esteemed speaker, Professor Balram. It's a mark of respect, acknowledgement and veneration for this wonderful lecture. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude the program, I would like to invite Dr. Rashmi, Dean and Joint Director Education, for the formal vote of thanks. Sorry.
Permit me for 1 minute. Friends, when I thought of approaching Professor Balram for this lecture, I knew his towering personality and very busy schedule. Time was too short. Then I approached Dr. Srinivasan. because he knew Dr. Uma Shankar in University of Agricultural Sciences, Bangalore, and Dr. Uma Shankar is close to Dr. Balram. So I used Dr. Srinivasan to talk to Dr. Uma Shankar, and then Dr. Uma Shankar to talk to Dr. Balram. I got his phone number. Till that time, the confirmation had not come. Then I dared to send a WhatsApp message to Professor Balram. He was traveling somewhere, and I was surprised to see that the next moment he said, "Fine, I will be more than happy to come." Thank you, sir, so much. And that's what precisely he said in his last slide, the humility and the simplicity. Amazing. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, each one of you. Chairperson of today's function, most respected Padam Bhushan Professor R.B. Singh, former Director IARI and former President NAS. Most esteemed Dr. Padmanabhan Balramji, former Director, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, and presently DST Year of Science Chair Professor at the National Center for Biological Sciences, Bengaluru, and the distinguished speaker of the 50th Lal Bahadur Shastri Memorial Lecture, member of the family of late Shri Shastri Ji, Sameep Shastri Ji. We have many dignitaries of the dais. On the dais, we have our director, Dr. A.K. Singh Ji. Of the dais, we have directors of many institutes. Dr. Kuldeep Singh, I was seeing, now I don't see him. There are others, Dr. S.N. Puri, Academic Council members, Dr. Tiwari, former director, Dr. H.S. Gupta, and many other dignitaries and PDs, heads of the division, professors, faculty members, students, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press and media, scientific staffs, and others. It is my pleasure and honor to propose this formal vote of thanks at the end of the successful organization of this most prestigious 50th Lal Bahadur Shastri Memorial Function, which was organized today by Indian Agricultural Research Institute. So on behalf of director, faculty, staff and students, and on my own personal behalf, first I would like to sincerely thank Professor R.B. Singh, and he so kindly agreed for accepting our invitation to be the chairperson of today's prestigious lecture. We feel honored, sir, and highly inspired by your presence for chairing this session. I wish to convey my heartfelt gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Padmanabhan Balram for accepting our invitation to deliver this 50th Lal Bahadur Shastri Memorial Lecture and joining us in paying our humble tribute to memory of late Shri Shastri Ji, sir. Sir, your lecture, I must say, it was a blend of fundamentals of chemistry, biology, and biophysics, and which really gave a food for thought at this time when we are breaking for lunch. I'm sure that many of our stomachs will be full of thoughts and go back to read so many new papers and fundamental papers which you have highlighted during your presentation. It was really a very, very scintillating and thought-provoking lecture, sir, which you gave us, blending the agriculture and also with the social cultural things. I am sincerely thankful to the member of the family of Shri Lal Bahadur Shastri Ji, Sameep Shastri Ji, and Lal Bahadur Shastri Ji's family have built and nurtured a very special and intimate relationship with this institute. And the scientists of ICR system in general, we as scientists owe a lot of our dedication to the cause of excellence in agricultural research and education to the Shastri Ji family. On behalf of the institute, I would like to record our sincere thanks to all of them, specifically to Sameep Shastri Ji, who very affectionately came and graced the occasion. I would like to convey my sincere thanks to our director, Dr. A.K. Singh. I owe a special thanks to Dr. A.K. Singh, who arranged this lecture of Dr. Balram, and all the support, all the logistic, administrative, and guidance throughout this organizing of this particular lecture. So I'm so grateful to you, sir. I record my sincere appreciation and thanks to all the invited guests, all the distinguished invited guests who are among the audiences for their gracious presence with us. I express my sincere thanks to all the directors of the sister institutions, all the DDGs, our newly joined DDG Crop Sciences, Dr. T.R. Sharma is here, our DDG Education, Dr. R.C. Agarwal is here, and many other dignitaries from ICR and officials, they are here. So my sincere thanks to all of you. My thanks to joint directors, project director, heads of the division, all the faculty members, professors, students, and all others who have come here in great number to grace this occasion and listen to such a learned speaker. I extend my thanks to the representative members of the press media, Doordarshan, for responding to our invitation and covering this prestigious lecture. Grateful acknowledgement is also accorded here for the services given by several of my colleagues in faculty, staff, and postgraduate school, students, volunteers, and the technical, administrative, and supporting staff from the directorate, different divisions, and this auditorium for their invaluable, dedicated contribution behind the scene for successful organization of this function. Thank you once again, all of you. Jai Hind.